King Charles finally strips Camilla of everything, leaving her with nothing forever. In the quiet halls of Clarence House, King Charles III sat motionless in a weathered armchair, staring at an old cassette player. The air around him was still, as if time had paused to let this moment settle. His hands trembled slightly, not from illness, but from something deeper. Inside the cassette deck was Diana's voice, recorded long ago but echoing louder than ever. It wasn't a royal statement or political message. It was a woman's truth, raw and unfiltered. Charles, if you're listening to this, maybe you've finally seen what I saw. Her voice, soft yet piercing, filled the room like a ghost come home. Charles closed his eyes. Every word landed like a truth he could no longer deny. This wasn't just about regret, it was about clarity, a clarity that had taken him decades to reach. For years, he had convinced himself that love could be defined by history, loyalty, even duty. But now, sitting alone in a house full of memories, he understood something devastating. He had been wrong. He didn't lose Diana the day she died. He lost her the day he chose Camilla. It wasn't one decision that undid everything, it was 100 small ones. The missed phone calls, the quiet betrayal, the selfish silences. During his battle with cancer, Charles had waited for comfort, for Camilla to visit, to call, to care. But she never did. The only thing that showed up was her perfectly scheduled public appearances, the carefully staged photos, the headlines calling her Queen Camilla, the face of royal grace. But from his hospital bed, none of that mattered. He saw through the illusion, and it wasn't just the silence that broke him. It was the noise, the parties, the press coverage, the way she smiled on red carpets while he fought for his life in a cold, white room. She wasn't there, not when it mattered. Charles began tracing the cracks backward. A year earlier, he'd received a letter from Camilla, formally written by her aide, explaining that she would not be attending an important royal charity anniversary. The reason? A scheduling conflict. But Charles knew it was more than that. It was a pattern. The emotional distance. The growing coldness. It didn't hit him all at once. It built slowly, like a leak in the ceiling that eventually caved in the roof. There was a moment, back in South Korea, when he watched Camilla stand beside the First Lady in a tailored green gown that made her look more like a museum exhibit than a royal representative. Her face was tense, her movements calculated. And then he looked at Catherine, Princess of Wales, who wasn't even supposed to be center stage. Yet when she walked into the room, the entire mood shifted. Catherine didn't need jewels to shine, she just had that thing Diana once had, that natural grace, that realness. It was in that moment that something inside Charles broke. He realized the legacy he was leaving behind was not one of strength or unity, but confusion. And monarchy caught between image and reality. Camilla had spent years securing her place beside him, but not for love, for power. And now she was preparing for life after him. Quiet meetings with lawyers, talks of financial guarantees, discussions about her future titles. While Charles lay in bed, dealing with mortality, she was already making sure the spotlight wouldn't dim. He had given up too much. Diana, his son's trust, his public's respect. All for a woman who saw the crown as a prize, not a responsibility. And now, finally, it was time to take it all back. The meeting room at Buckingham Palace was thick with silence as the royal legal team filed in. Charles, though visibly weakened, looked more resolute than any of them had ever seen. The king didn't bother with small talk or ceremonial pleasantries. He simply handed over a list, a short one, but heavy. It outlined new directives. Camilla's complete removal from all royal duties, her titles revoked, and a full review of her financial entitlements. A stunned advisor glanced up. "Your Majesty? Are you sure?" Charles's eyes, once known for their polite restraint, now held something sharper. "She was never the monarchy's future," he said. "I was just too blind to see it." The decision wasn't made out of vengeance. It came from clarity. Cold, undeniable clarity. Every line of that list reflected a moment where Camilla had chosen prestige over partnership. While Charles was in and out of medical wards, she was preoccupied with galas and designer fittings. Behind palace walls, the news began spreading like wildfire. Staffers passed whispers down the gilded halls, aides packed up their desks, and former allies of Camilla quietly distanced themselves. Clarence House, once a place of royal strategy and showmanship, now felt hollow. In a private sitting room, Camilla stood alone, watching as her assistant removed framed photographs from a shelf. She didn't stop them, she just stared, her lips pressed together. No tears, no outbursts, just quiet panic. "I did everything for this," she muttered almost to herself. Everything. She tried to regroup. Days later, she threw a reception for international media. Lavish decorations, flawless makeup, her most regal tiara perched like a last-ditched crown. She smiled, posed, gave the perfect sound bites. But the cameras captured more than she meant to reveal. Her eyes looked distant, her posture stiff. The headlines the next morning didn't praise her poise, they questioned her desperation. At Kensington Palace, a different kind of preparation was underway. Catherine, with her usual calm, listened carefully as royal advisors outlined her growing responsibilities. She didn't interrupt or seek validation. She simply asked, "What does the public need from us now?" Her focus wasn't on taking Camilla's place, it was on restoring what had been lost: trust, legacy, sincerity. She began quietly stepping into the vacuum left behind. Meetings with charity leaders, visits to underfunded schools, personal letters to grieving families. Nothing flashy, just real, honest gestures, the kind Diana used to make. Meanwhile, Charles retreated to Sandringham, where his days were split between briefings and long hours of reflection. He wasn't trying to reclaim his past, he was rewriting his future. One morning, a leather box was delivered to him. Inside was a stack of old photographs, most of Diana, some with the boys. A few handwritten notes folded neatly inside. They were sent by William, a silent offering, a reminder of everything still worth protecting. That afternoon, Charles made a new request. "Re-establish the Diana Fund," he said, fully authorized by the Crown, and I want Catherine overseeing it. No one questioned him this time. Later, in the same study where Diana's photo hung above the fireplace, Charles drafted a handwritten note. It was short, just a few lines. "I can't fix everything, but I can choose who carries the light forward." He signed it with a shaking hand, folded it, and set it aside. The winds outside carried the scent of summer roses through the open window. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy, it felt right. A quiet buzz filled the Commonwealth Hall in London as leaders and press gathered for an international summit. Cameras clicked rapidly as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped up to the podium. She wore a soft navy dress, no flashy jewelry, no exaggerated gestures, just poise. She began with a steady voice. "I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to continue something that was never supposed to end. Compassion, dignity, and duty." The room erupted in applause. Across the nation, the moment struck a chord. Newspapers ran headlines calling her the true heart of the monarchy. Social media exploded with posts praising her speech. The phrase "Queen of Hearts" too started trending, not as a forced branding campaign, but a genuine recognition of something the public had long been missing. At a Manchester community center the next week, Catherine sat on the floor beside a child, listening as he described his dream of becoming a doctor. No press flanked her, no choreographed moment, just a woman who cared. One elderly woman watched and whispered to a volunteer, "She reminds me of Diana, not because she tries, but because she doesn't have to." Back in Windsor, Charles spent more time in the garden than in meetings. His body had weakened. The walks were slower now, his cane more necessary than ever. But his mind was sharp, clearer than it had been in decades. Every morning he reviewed updates from the Diana Fund, now fully operational under Catherine's guidance. He circled sections with a red pen. Mental health outreach, funding for children's hospitals, emergency aid for war victims. Each mark was a small act of redemption. He wrote letters too, dozens of them, to organizations Diana once supported, to hospitals he never got to visit with her, and most of all, to his sons. One letter to William read, "Son, I mistook loyalty for love and duty for destiny, but I've seen the truth now. Protect what truly matters, even if it means facing fire." To Harry, he wrote something shorter, "No crown matters if it doesn't honor your mother." Camilla, meanwhile, lived in near silence at her Scottish estate. Her calls to former allies were rarely returned. The tabloids that once worshipped her wardrobe now referred to her with cool detachment. One headline simply read, "The era that never was." She sat by a window most days, nursing glasses of wine she no longer enjoyed. Her aides dwindled to a skeleton crew, One evening, she picked up an old framed photo of her and Charles from their early days. Her hand trembled as she stared at it. "I had it all," she whispered, "but I was never enough without the crown." A leaked audio clip of Charles surfaced online days later. In a conversation with a confidant, he could be heard saying, "She lost a kingdom, but I lost a family. And that's the difference." The public clung to those words. They were shared, quoted, turned into headlines and hashtags, not as gossip, but as catharsis. By August, the monarchy felt different, not because of pomp or policy, but because of energy. Catherine visited children's hospitals, William launched new programs for veterans, Diana's name appeared in places it hadn't for decades, but now in celebration, not grief. In the final days of summer, Charles stood in the Royal Rose Garden at Sandringham, holding a photograph of Diana and their sons. He smiled faintly, the scent of roses filling the warm air. "You were right," he whispered. "It was never about the crown." The breeze carried his words into the stillness. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, at last, felt worthy.